Sophia Nyborg Anderson, and I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar today, Business Plans Made Simple. As everyone is getting online, I'd like to share a little bit about the SBDC for those who are not familiar with our program. Essentially, the SBDC at the University of La Verne is a grant-funded program through the Small Business Administration and the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development to help businesses get started and grow. And we do this two ways. We offer free workshops and webinars, and we supplement the workshops and webinars with free one-on-one consulting to help you be successful. And if you're interested in signing up for free consulting services, we'll put the link in the chat for all of you watching on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. Also, as we get started, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be placed on mute to help eliminate any background noise, but please submit your questions using the Q&A feature on Zoom, which is down below, or the comment section if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And don't be shy. We want to make sure you get your questions answered. Josh and I will be the co-hosts for today, and we'll be helping moderate the questions, and we'll have plenty of time throughout the webinar and the end to address your questions. The recording will be available afterwards and will be emailed to you. So if you need to drop off early, we have you covered and we'll send you the recording. And with those housekeeping items out of the way, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Sean Snyder. Sean grew up in a family business. He has a bachelor's and master's in entrepreneurship. Sean has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to creating business plans for new and existing businesses. And Sean is a consultant and our director here at the University of La Verne SBDC. And without further ado, please welcome Sean Snyder.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and thank you everybody for being here today talking about business plans and our Making Business Plans Simple webinar. We've got a good one for you. And as we get started, I want to give a big shout out to our chamber partners that we're working with to kind of co-host this event and share this information as far and wide as possible, because, well, we think we got some good information for you today. Well, we're going to be going over a tool that we've created here at the University of La Verne SBDC to kind of make business plans a little less and a little more, okay, I can do that, and that makes sense. So we've created a tool basically here at the University of La Verne SBDC after working with businesses for many, many years. Whether they're starting a business and they need help kind of pushing around the numbers to evaluate the feasibility of the business idea, and whether it's worth your time, your talent, and your treasure to invest into, or for businesses that are more established. You know, many times you go to a bank and they say, hey, can you give me a business plan to support your loan application? And so you may be in one of those two buckets or maybe somewhere in between. But today we've created a tool that hopefully will make it a little less time-consuming process to develop a business plan, a little less confusing, and we've got free consulting that can help you all throughout the way. But there are three quick rules I want to go over as we kind of kick things off, and that's rule number one is to be real with yourself. You got to be real with the person in the mirror, because really a business plan is a collection of assumptions, really. And if you're not real with yourself and how you came to those assumptions, it's going to be a lot harder to implement. Just really going to be honest, or it won't work at all. So rule number one is be real with yourself. Rule number two is to do it yourself. Although you heard me mention we have free consulting to help you through the process, ultimately this is your business plan that should be done by you. But I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that it's not the business plan at the end of the road that's really important. It's the planning process that you go through when you're developing a business plan that's really valuable. It's what goes into it. What are they based on? So that, again, we can really have a firm understanding if this is going to work for us. If you could hire out the development of a business plan, but then it becomes whoever, their plan, not yours. So rule number two is do it yourself. And rule number three is to keep it simple. I'm a simple person, and I love the rule in business is the KISS model, keep it simple, silly. Well, it doesn't matter if you're the newest, latest, greatest SaaS software, or you're like, I grew up in a plumbing business. we all follow the same rules, and that's sales minus expenses equals net income. So don't make it harder than it has to be or fancier than that, I always say. But I like to get right into it. Those are the 3 rules. We're going to kind of look at a tool that will help us develop a business plan. So, well, first things first, the tool that I'm talking about is located at businessplanproject.org. This is the website we're going to be going over today. And well, right now we're on a website. I'm using a computer. You will need a computer to navigate the website, and you will need Microsoft Word to be able to edit your business plan. So those are kind of the 2 requirements. I'm using Chrome, which is recommended. You can use Safari or Mozilla or another browser, but we have seen some performance issues. So we say, use Chrome. But really, I want to kind of get one of your main questions answered, and that's how do I get access? So if you're watching this webinar live on Zoom, well, you already have an account and it should have been emailed to you prior to our webinar this morning. So you already have your credentials to log in. If you don't have them, please check your junk or your spam folder. A lot of times it goes there. But if you can't find it even after that, you can email us at sbdc@laverne.edu and we'll get you your credentials. But if you're watching today on social, like LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you will need to first sign up to become a client. And there's a button right here that says sign up now. Reason being is we can't work with all businesses. We're a federally funded grant program, so we can't work with like CBD businesses, gambling, or businesses of a sexually prurient nature. We have some restrictions on the businesses we can and can't work with, but for the most part, we can work with a large amount of businesses, to say the least. But that's the number one thing, aside from the rules that we talked about, is how do you get access to it? And so today we're going to be going over this tool that hopefully will be beneficial for you. I'm going to go up here at the top right and log in. And I've got an account I've created for today's webinar that we're just going to log into. And really quick, what I want to mention is I just clicked login, and you can see that the web page is doing something, but it will take 10 to 15 seconds to log in. So it's a little slow. So if you click login, depending on your internet speed and the device and even your browser, it may take a little bit of time. But a small price to pay for a great software we like to think of to help you do a business plan. And so here I am on the business plan inside the website. We create an account for everybody. So it's your business plan. And you can see across the top, I'm already on that tab. You can schedule an appointment or log out. The website is very simple. It's, just to help you do a business plan. But down below, we've got some tabs here where we've essentially reverse engineered a business plan into a lot of questions and answers. So you can focus on your content of the business plan rather than formatting a pretty document in Microsoft Word and getting all the tables to look right. We can just focus now on the content that goes into the plan, those assumptions that I talked about. But as you navigate the different tabs, and we're going to go through them all together today, you will notice some of these little tooltip icons. And I want to point this out because if you hover over it and you click the link, you will get a picture, you'll get a YouTube video of yours truly kind of walking you through that section. So you can see them throughout the business plan website, but it's really helpful. So it's kind of you can go at your own pace, and you have someone there helping you every step of the way. So you're never feeling lost or don't know what to do. But right away, we're going to walk through this because a lot of times people will ask me, well, Sean, how long does it take to develop a business plan? And it depends. We're going to do one in an hour, but that's because I have all the information readily available for my business plan. And that's part of the learning process, is we're going to identify things that we know and things that we don't know about our business venture, whether we're starting up or we're already established and we're looking to grow. And the things we know, great, woohoo. The things that we don't know, okay, now we need to talk about, we need to strategize, we may need to do some research to better inform our assumptions. But we're going to take it from the top. And so I have entered in some information into this business plan to help expedite the process. But right out of the gates, I want to mention we've got, some questions here. What's the name of the business? So I'm going to go with Sean's TKD. I'm going to do a Taekwondo studio for today's example. What year is it? Well, it's 2023. Let's say we're just starting this business this year. Do we have a website? Sure. Let's say https:// I'm doing this part. There's a big note here. It's not very big, but you do have to include the HTTP part rather than just the www.sean'stkd.com. Let's see my email, Snyder@laverne.edu, my phone number, 81567, my name, and my street address. I'm going to plug in the SBDC address. Laverne, California, 91750. Okay, you can see why now I've added some of the content so you don't have to sit there and watch me type all for this webinar. But I wanted to show you kind of how simple and easy it is to plug in your information. Because now as we scroll down, I've already gone ahead and plugged in some of the business descriptions section information. We just did the contact information, but in any business plan, there will be a section called business description where we kind of have to outline for the reader, what's our industry? What are our top 3 goals over the next, say, 12 to 24 months? What's our mission? How is the company structured? Are we an LLC or a sole proprietor? Who owns what % of the business? What type of business? When was it established? Some ancillary details to help kind of set the tone for the reader of, okay, what kind of business is this that I'm reading about? The big one here, I'd say collective years of experience. Hopefully you come from the industry. So a lot of the information and assumptions are going to be based on that experience. That's going to be really important for a lender. If you're looking to get a loan, you're doing a business plan to support a loan application. They want to know that, Sean may be an SBDC director, but now he's going to go start a TKD studio. I don't know, he's got some management experience, but does it really relate to the industry? So some other factors we're going to talk about in this section are going to be, what they refer to oftentimes as key success factors. And so I've plugged in a few here. We can list up to 5, and throughout the business plan template, it's kind of what this is, or this website. And, if there's 5, doesn't mean you have to fill in all 5. It's fill in what's appropriate for your business. And so here I'm saying, we're going to focus on having a good reputation, attracting local patronage and support, being, easy access for our clients, good product promotion and marketing, and highly skilled workforce. I mean, Taekwondo, my son is a 2nd-degree black belt. And let me tell you, it took a while to get that. So that's definitely highly skilled. But if you're kind of want to cheat a little bit, I know some folks on the line might go, Sean, what's the shortcut? Well, nowadays we have this friend called ChatGPT, and we could say, if you haven't heard about it, I invite you to check it out. But it's an AI tool, and it kind of describes what it can do here. It can do a lot, and I think a lot of people are learning more about the power. But we could say, what are the top 5 key success factors for a martial arts studio? And please don't judge my spelling. I'm not the best speller. We're in the circle of trust right now. And this is a cool tool because, well, you can ask it just about anything and it will write for you very professionally. You can make it, you can really do a lot with this tool. But here, let's see what they said. Quality instruction, strong curriculum, positive learning environment, effective marketing and promotion. Okay, we did have that one. And outstanding customer service. So I'm going to throw in a little bit of some cheats along the way. This is one that can help a lot with the writing because, well, I think about my mother when she would always say, Sean, my business plan is simple. It's to make money. Why do I have to write it down? Well, sometimes you have to write it down for the lender, and sometimes you have to write it down for yourself. And the writing part can be a little bit challenging, and that's a great tool to kind of help you, how do we say, articulate what you're thinking. Sometimes I usually start with things that I'm going to focus on, and then I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll see what Chat says. Or another one is Bard. That's Google's AI tool that I would recommend you take a look at. But that's kind of the business description section. Aside from what are the major products and services you plan to sell? That's really what the reader wants to know is, okay, what are we selling here? And so I'm going to say we're selling monthly TKD memberships. And for sake of example, I'm going to include belt testing. So every time my son would graduate from one belt to the next, they would have to go through an exam where they had to memorize their forms. And as the parent, I had to pay $50 for my son to take that exam. So we're going to say, that's what we offer. We could list out more. And the text here that you see, the placeholder text, is for a plumbing business because I grew up doing plumbing. So, but it doesn't matter what your business is. You don't have to use them all. But we just completed the first section of the business plan. Woohoo. But how do we get that business plan? So there's two buttons here down at the bottom. One is calculate, which will involve more of our, whenever we plug in our financial numbers, we'll have to click that button, and we'll see that here in a second. But the other one is save. And this is a really important button, and I went ahead and clicked it. It will take 5 to 7 seconds to actually save. So it will not auto save your documents. So if you log out, or you close the browser, or you navigate to another page on the website without clicking save, your data won't be saved. So don't click save before you log out, navigate to another page, or what was the third thing? Just click save. I guess that's my point. You don't need to click save as you navigate between the tabs, but you will need to click save periodically. And so I usually recommend that clients do that once they've filled in a good chunk of information. Don't use any special characters like $signs or commas when we get to the numbers, or percent signs. Just straight text and numbers. But it tells us here, hey, your business plan has been saved. You can click the link below. Unfortunately, it's over here on the left-hand side. And then now we can get a pop-up where we can email it to ourselves or just download the document. And we have completed the first couple sections of the business plan. So it takes our answers and it plugs it into a template that I would say gets you 90% there. Now, there will be some editing, like you can see here, the 2021 has a period because it thinks it's like a different kind of number or date format. But we just filled in a lot of information about our business. And now it's in this pretty document, which again, great to have and might need it to submit for a loan application, but it's the planning process that's really important. And some of it might need to be deleted, like we don't have 5 products or services, so we can just delete that. But we're not done yet. So there will be a lot of blanks throughout the business plan as we're filling it in. So I'm just going to close this. I'm not going to save it. And in order to get back to our business plan, we have to just navigate back up here at the top. Business plan. Again, it is going. Anytime you navigate to and from this one particular page, it will take a good 15 seconds or so to load. So give it time. Don't get too click happy. Like I tell my kids, they're just like, click, click, click. Come on, slow down. Give it a minute. It's doing a lot of work there for you. But we just completed the company information section. And now we can move on to the marketing. So we told the reader in the business plan a little bit about who we are, what we do, some of our goals, how's the company structured, basic stuff. It's basic, but we use this oftentimes in the consulting process to also kind of peel back the onion. Because one of the questions I quickly glossed over, but I said, I'm going to be an LLC. A lot of folks at the startup phase might not know, okay, hey, Sean, what's the difference between an LLC and a corporation, or this fancy S corporation I hear so much about? So that's where we kind of use this as a tool to help not only develop a business plan with clients, but to also kind of play devil's advocate and or answer other questions that come up along the way. So as we're moving forward, I will take a pause here at the end of the marketing section to answer any questions. So if you got questions, like Sophia said at the top of the hour, be brave, get them into the Q&A or into the comments if you're watching on social. But what we're looking at next is this marketing section. And a marketing plan is a little, how do I say, sometimes for me, it felt a little nebulous or ambiguous. And so I created what I consider a one-page marketing plan. And in that one-page marketing plan, it talks about kind of high-level industry. And that's where we do have industry research tools that you can gain access to through the SBDC, but they do take time. So another tool, we can go back to our friend ChatGPT and say, write 2 paragraphs about the martial arts industry and see what that kind of comes up with, if it's going to go. But another one would be you can check your local library, your economic development groups for industry information. Sometimes it can be kind of costly to get it. So different locations will have different databases. One that I would point your attention to if you're in LA County might be their databases. I forget the name of it, but under digital library, you can go into their database section and there's business, and it's the top hit, Business Insight Essentials. And so they don't have every industry. So if I were to type in martial arts, it's not going to pull up martial arts. There's a lot of different industry profiles. So what you end up having to do in a lot of cases is do martial arts industry NAICS code. And the NAICS code is just a kind of a code that classifies different industries. Sometimes you might get lumped into multiple industries, but now we can take this kind of number, this 611, 620, and then type it in here. See if we get anything. And we get sports and recreation instruction. Not exactly martial arts studios, but at least something that doesn't cost us an arm and a leg to get the industry report to start to look at the industry. But again, I said earlier, hopefully you come from the industry and you know how that industry is kind of operating, the current conditions, so that you can kind of inform this particular box that we have to fill in. And I've taken this one from IBIS World, from a report that I've gotten previously. That's kind of like I wouldn't say gold standard, but it's really good, but it's harder to come by. But there's different industry research tools. And what we want to do here for the reader is just kind of set the tone for the marketing, because oftentimes the reader of your business plan doesn't come from the industry the way that you do. So we kind of have to use some third-party data to kind of validate our industry and that it's growing and so forth. And do look at that information because, well, the pandemic has changed a lot and there's some new industry trends. So don't just copy and paste it. Look at what you're putting in there. But after the industry section, we really want to come real low level. So high level industry, low level, who is our market, or who is our target market more specifically? And write a little sentence about it. You know, our target market are parents of children between the ages of 7 and 14 who live near our location and have a household income of X or Y. That's if we're like business to consumer. But if you're business to business, you might use characteristics like types of industries that you're targeting, the number of employees of the typical client, or the sales volume. So, you know, who you're targeting, explain that to the reader so they understand we know who we're going after. Granted, we'll sell to anybody, you know, by all means, but there's probably somebody out there who would appreciate or see value in your product or service more so than someone else. So being targeted. And then we have in the target market section here, kind of 2 columns, I'd say. You know, one, what are the top 3 needs of our customer? Here we're saying easy access, great teachers, and affordability or cost. And in column 2, we wanted to explain like how we're going to meet those needs. Well, we're going to be located in a great location with ample parking and great complementary anchor stores so that you can drop the kids off, go to Sprouts or wherever, do your grocery shopping, come back, you know, within an hour. And it's easy parking, those things that are important to our customer. In terms of great teachers, you know, we're going to have experienced teachers that are trained at, you know, working with all age levels. And then competitive pricing and a 2-week trial to get people to see the value. And we're going to be, you know, competitively priced with other martial arts studios, because there are a lot. There's mixed martial arts, you've got jiu-jitsu, you got karate, you got taekwondo. So we got to know our competition. And that's kind of the next section here, is this competitive analysis part. Now, it looks like a lot, but what we're basically need to do, and I'm gonna go down and hit calculate, because if you see right now, we have a bunch of like categories, and then we're gonna see I'm listing our competitors as coolest TKD, high kick TKD, and hi-ya TKD. I got a little creative here, but I'm gonna hit calculate. I want to do that for one quick reason. you're going to see now these names be plotted along this white space right here. And the first column is us. And so if you've never done a competitive analysis chart before, it can be a little confusing, but it's a really important exercise to, well, see how you stack up against the competition, against categories or criteria that is important to your customer. So first, we got to fill in this left-hand column. And again, if I've got my stuff already plugged in, but if I take this out, there is like kind of placeholder text that will kind of guide you through the process. So professionalism, yeah, that might be important, but it's not as important as having a good teacher for me. So on each one of these, like even weapons training, like the nunchuck stuff, some places might not do that. But what we need to do is look at what we think is important decision-making criteria for our customer to decide to go with us versus, Josh's TKD or Sophia's TKD. And so we have good teachers. So most cases, most businesses, when they're doing this, they're going to say that, they're strong on all categories, because in each of these drop downs, we have two options. We're either strong in this area or we're weak. And if you want to be real with yourself, you're doing this for yourself, you could say, yeah, my parking isn't the best. I'm kind of weak in that area. But most people, when they're putting forward a business plan to an investor or a banker, they're going to be like, oh, we're amazing in all these categories. But you do have to follow rule number one, which is kind of be real with yourself. But the hard part is then taking a deep dive into each one of these competitors and going, well, how do they stack up against having good teachers? And that's where I always recommend, secret shop. Hopefully you come from the industry so you kind of know what they're known for. But if you don't, or you can't secret shop them, talk to their customers, see what they're paying, look at their Google reviews or Yelp reviews or other directory listings to see what people love about them and maybe not so much, so that you can evaluate, how you fit in this ecosystem and competitors. So that when someone calls you on the phone and says, why should I go with Sean's TKD versus Coolest TKD? You never want to speak ill of the competition, but you want to be able to say, you know what, we pride ourselves on A, B, and C. And knowing how you fit in that competitive landscape is really important. I'll show you kind of the chart. Basically, if it's strong, it's an X. If it's weak, it's an empty spot in a little matrix. But it's a common piece of a business plan that you'll see is a competitive analysis. But in some regards, I would say it's kind of like a checkbox. Like, yeah, it's there. But if you're starting a business, it's a very simple exercise, but you really want to know this part. Yeah, we can plug in, oh, this person's weak in this area and this person's weak here. That's easy enough. But if you're an entrepreneur or you're starting your own Taekwondo business or your own business, like you really want to take some time here to evaluate the alternatives for your customer, just to balance out, know from your pricing to what you're looking for in a lease location to all these criteria. So I gloss over it a little bit here because, well, it's kind of just a section, but you as the entrepreneur or the business owner should really know your competition. And then the last section of the marketing, before I pause for questions, is where most people go to when they think about marketing, advertising. Like what are the outlets that you're going to use to inform your customers that you even exist and that you're open and you're taking new patients or new clients or students, etc. So again, we can list up to 8 outlets. Don't feel like you need to plug them all in. Less is more. Keep it simple. Rule number 3, I think it was. I get mixed up with only 3. But we're going to have a website and we need to answer 3 things. What's the outlet? What's this going to cost us on an annual basis? And then we have to write a sentence about why is it important for the reader can understand, why we're investing our time, our talent, or our treasure in this outlet in hopes for a return. So we've got a little drop down to make it a little easier for you to pick, because most businesses is going to be, a website for a digital presence, maybe some email marketing, like a MailChimp or Constant Contact, some social media ads. That's where I've got some spend behind it. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to do social media, and social media is great. But we're probably going to need to put some ad spend behind it. And that's where also SBDCs come in. Like, how do I run a Facebook ad campaign or something like that? Maybe we're going to do some events. We're going to have movie nights. That was one of the things that I used to love about when my son was doing TKD is they would have movie nights to encourage their members to bring their friends and experience the studio, while at the same time, mom and dad could take their friends out on a date night or go. So that was one of my favorite marketing outlets that dojo used to do. Other things would be like directory listings. Yeah, we're going to have a listing on Yelp or Google so that people can leave their reviews, post their pictures of, I got my black belt. But again, less is more. We offer 8 options, but the big thing is here. We're starting to get into some costs here. Now, these won't populate over to our advertising budget, which we're going to talk about in a second. But now we start, if I'm your consultant, I'm looking at your marketing plan. I'm like, okay, well, what is your website built on? Do you know how to navigate that? Do you know how to build it, or are you going to hire it out? Then we get into this conversations about implementation, because ideas are easy. Implementation is hard. I love that quote from Guy Kawasaki. But we just completed another big section, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. It will take some time, so be patient. It's going. And then I'm going to navigate back to the business plan as we open it up for Q&A or questions and answers so far. I know I'm going quick, but I like to get right to it. So Sophia, how are we doing? Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a couple questions. The first question is your advice similar for nonprofit organizations?
Ooh, good one. Yes, my advice, I would have to ask in terms of what, but as a nonprofit, you have to cover your costs. And yes, it's kind of taking a look at your market and who you're serving. But as a nonprofit, the big difference we get into is more of the sales, because we're not selling something at a premium. We're probably looking to offer a product or a service and we offset our costs from donors or members. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, it's very similar, just slightly different.
All right. And then our next question is, how do we access this resource for marketing research?
So the two that I covered, one, ChatGPT, is a free tool, AI tool. It's the one that took the world by storm like 2 months ago. They're already up to 100 million users. It's a free tool. Another one, you just have to create an account with like an email address and a password, like anything else. Just don't put any sensitive information here, because whenever the tool is free, you are the product. So who knows what, like I entered here, write 2 paragraphs about the industry trends for the martial arts industry. So just be cognizant of that. But in terms of the databases, the one I showed before, this is lacountylibrary.org. And in order to get access to their databases, all you need to do is have a library card. And to get a library card, you can do online. You can get a digital library card by filling out a form. And as long as you're over 18 and have an address in Los Angeles County, you can get a library card instantly. I don't live in Los Angeles County, but I am a California resident. So I was able to get a LA County library card, but I had to physically go down to an LA County library location. And the thing I would mention here, libraries are sometimes county run. Like in this case, the LA County, the city of Laverne, we have a LA County library. Sometimes they're city run. So in other cities, they might have their own library, like the city of Pasadena has their own library. They're going to have different databases. So check out your library, check out other local libraries, but to get access, you kind of need a library card.
Okay. And then a follow-up question to that was, are we able to access the Gale website info?
Yes, so that's through their database. So all I did was, let me go back. I went to the LA County Library. I went down over to databases under their digital library menu, and I went to business and Gale courses. Oh, wait, you talked about Gale. So Gale is, they have Gale ebook. They have a lot, but yeah, depending on their licensing, that tool looks like it's also available, but I'd have to check with the librarians on what they do and don't have.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
All right, well, let's go on back to our good old business plan, and we will take another little pause for questions. So if something's brewing in your mind, please write it down. We'll take a pause. Next, we're going to talk about 2 sections. The first up is the team. Now, the team is usually a kind of twofold. It's part of the narrative of the business plan, because a lot of times there's two pieces to a business plan. There's the narrative where you talk about who you are, what you do, who's involved, and that's part of the team. We got to talk about who's involved. But the other part of the business plan is more financial. And so the team kind of teeters on both. We got to talk about who's involved and what the roles are. But unless you're some expert negotiator, they're probably going to cost you a pretty penny. And that's where we've sectioned out team into its own tab, because one, it's important to know the roles and responsibilities, but also it's also usually a big expense for any business, payroll. So first thing we have to answer here is, how many team members do we have? And let's just say it's going to be 2. And I'm going to say, I'm going to be the owner. So Sean Snyder is the owner. I'm going to be involved full time. We could have different involvements. I think I said I had like over 10 years of experience. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've written some text here. Now we have to write a sentence about what I'm going to be responsible for. So I'm going to say Sean's going to be responsible for marketing, sales, instruction, and day-to-day operations. Now, financially, I'm not going to pay myself. I'm a single member LLC. So this is where we get into some of the, like, how am I going to pay myself? What can I afford to pay myself? And we're going to get to the numbers here in a second, but I'm going to skip over it because I might even add a sentence here that say Sean will be compensated, because my time is valuable, via an owner's distribution based on the company's financial performance. And I love it. It's spell checks because I cannot spell. So financial and performance. Oh, it doesn't even, the dictionary doesn't even know what I'm trying to say. Performance. Okay, there we go. Because, well, other employees in the business, let's say we've got Jane Doe. And Jane Doe is going to be an assistant instructor. And I kind of go through this first pass with more of a wish list mentality. Meaning, like, it's Christmas and I'm doing my, my list to Santa or something, like things, everything I want. We're going to get to the numbers and we're going to look to see if we can afford Sean's Christmas list. And if the answer is yes, okay, great. If the answer is no, now we got to start chipping away and coming back and revisiting some of these assumptions. But let's say we're going to have Jane Doe. She's going to be an instructor. She's going to have 2 years of experience. And let's say Jane is going to help us by doing some functions with the business. When we're doing our instruction, we're teaching a class and somebody walks in, like a new customer, we need someone who's going to go over there and greet them and give them our little flyer for, hey, yeah, we have a 2-week trial. Come, sign up. Here's our website, the sales pitch. So Jane's going to help us with not only, client instruction, but new signups and supporting day-to-day operations. But Jane's going to come at a cost. Jane isn't going to work for us for free. So let's say we're going to pay Jane $15.50 an hour, and she's going to work 20 hours per week. And she's an employee. And this is where we have this conversation about employee versus contractor. Jane is definitely going to be an employee because we're telling her where to work, when to work, providing the tools and a lot of other important classification decisions. And for that, we have to pay payroll taxes. I'm not going to get into payroll taxes, but it's an important thing to know as an employer. And in order to hire someone, we're going to have to pay workers' compensation insurance in case Jane gets hurt on the job. It's a state mandated requirement. So we're going to budget 2% of Jane's wages as workers' comp expense. So without getting too much into the detail on some of those conversations, and I would really strongly recommend you talk to one of our consultants on our team about your business plans you're going through this, to kind of, like, again, play devil's advocate. Because I could say, what is the workers' comp rate for a, instructional assistant for Taekwondo? Someone's bound to get hurt. I mean, there's feet flying, fists flying. The rates will vary depending on the job function. Someone who is serving as a hostess at a restaurant versus the chef in the back who's working with fire and knives. But I hit calculate down here, and you saw these numbers kind of start to populate. And that's where, again, the benefit of this tool that we found over the years in working with people, usually the numbers are in some sort of spreadsheet and there's a lot of formulas involved. Well, we take all the formulas out and you don't have to worry about breaking any of them. What we're focusing here is this amount is $15.50 times 20 hours a week times, there's a formula, but like basically 52 weeks a year. And then we've got some payroll taxes. Social Security, Medicare is going to be 15.3%. So you don't have to worry about the calculations. You can focus on, okay, Jane's going to cost us $1,500 a month. All right. Again, we're going through that first pass with a wish list mentality. But as I said in the beginning, I'm not starting in January. This is where we also have the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to start next month in July. So if I change that drop down to July and hit calculate, you'll see all the months prior in year one zero out. So this is what we sometimes refer to in the industry as your stub year. But if you're working with a bank, a lot of times banks likes to see 12-month projections or full year. So sometimes I'll do stub year, sometimes I'll do a full year for clients. But if we're starting in July, in month one, we already have a pretty hefty bill to pay to keep Jane on board, assuming, there's a lot more than just payroll that goes into keeping Jane as a employee. But that's our payroll and our team section that we'll see later on in the business plan. But very key stuff to look at. If I was playing devil's advocate, I'd say, well, who's responsible for accounting? I see you're responsible for sales and marketing, but who's doing the books? Little things like, oh yeah, I don't really like accounting. Oh, we're going to hire that out. Okay, well, then I would expect to see it on your expenses. So it's the conversation that's so valuable, really, around what Malcolm on our team will say, pushing around the numbers. So we've got some numbers and we're starting to push them around. Now, the next section, we've already basically made it through 3. And if we get to additional information, these last 4 will calculate on their own. So I don't want you to feel like, oh man, how long is this webinar going to go? We're almost not quite done, but I'd say we're about halfway there. And now we really start to move more fully into the numbers sections. The team and the narrative and the financials are kind of two, I won't say separate. They need to know, they do kind of work together, but now we're in the numbers part. And this is usually where businesses need a lot of help. And I totally understand, because you don't know what you don't know. And the only way to know what you don't know is to talk to somebody, do some research, or we've built this tool to help. And so the starting point tab is for a new business. It's going to be where we have to list out all of the things that we're going to have to buy just to get started on day one, before we take our first payment, our first student member. If you're an established business that's watching this, your starting point is pretty much your year-end balance sheet from the last fiscal year. Because if you ran your balance sheet, you're probably going to have assets on your books, things like these: land, buildings, tenant improvements, equipment, furniture, fixtures. And we're just going to take those numbers and plug them in. The most important asset for any business is going to be working capital, cash on hand. So that's going to show up in the assets section of checking, savings, and plugging those numbers in. But in our example, we're a startup. We're starting this Taekwondo business next month. Who's with me? Crickets. Okay, so no, we need to buy some stuff. So we aren't going to buy the building or the land, maybe later, hopefully one day, but we are going to need some tenant improvements. We are going to need some equipment. We are going to need some furniture and fixtures, things that, like, for our parents to sit while they're watching the class, maybe. And the first one is tenant improvements, sometimes called leaseholder improvements, and it's a big section. So we've got some notes here to help you think this through. Like when we moved into the SBDC office, I had to do paint, I had to do carpet, I dropped some electrical lines, there was a bathroom in one office, or a sink that I had to drywall over. There's a lot of like construction stuff. So here we got electrical alterations, plumbing alterations, flooring, carpet versus tile per square foot, some things to think about. But the big thing I'd mention here is this is a negotiation a lot of times with the landlord. Sometimes they'll give you an allowance. And so we have a lot of conversations with our clients about that. But I'm just going to say $30,000 is what it's going to cost us to take care of the mirrors, the mats, the flooring. Because I think about my son's Taekwondo studio. It had a nice wood floor, if they didn't already have it. But they had the mat, like, so when you fall, you don't get hurt. Again, we're starting in July. So the difference between the long-term assets section primarily and the things we're gonna have to buy, these operating capital, is these are going to be depreciated. And depreciation is a fancy term for loss in value that we're able to expense as a business. I don't want to get too much in the weeds right here, but it'll take care of that. It's going to say $30,000 divided by 12 months a year, divided by 7 years. We're going to be able to depreciate that amount. We'll take care of the calculations for you, but it is an important concept as a business owner to know that you can write off depreciation. So equipment, let's say $5,000, and you have things like computers, printers, phones, point of sale. I'm going to say, yeah, we're going to need a computer, a printer. We're going to have a little office. That's why I put up here office wall. Maybe like it's a vanilla shell situation. We might have to build a wall so we can meet with people privately, talk to them about our annual deal versus the month to month. And yeah, we need some furniture and fixtures. Let's say $5,000 for tables and chairs for not just our office furniture, but also for our parents to sit on while they're waiting for their student. So right now, again, it says total assets 0, but if we go down and hit calculate, now we will see that add up. Basically, we're looking at $40,000, is that right? Of long-term assets. These are assets that at the top, it's kind of small, but it says, things that are usually over $2,500 each, and talk to your accountant to find out what your depreciation threshold level is. But usually they're a little bit larger in price tag and they last you longer than a year. So just talk to your accountant like, hey, is this something I'm depreciating or is this just a supply expense? But those are our long-term assets. Now we may need to buy some stuff just to get started for our TKD. And I'm just going to check them all off, but only use what you need. These are just categories to consider. And so pre-opening salaries and wages, I don't use too often because, well, it's kind of like soft costs if you're going to have to have Jane come in before you actually open. But so I just kind of usually, I don't use that one too much. But insurance, yeah, we're going to need to pay for, let's say $1,000 general liability, insurance policy, just to sign the lease that we're looking for. Inventory, yeah, we're gonna have maybe like $1,000 of inventory for maybe some shirts and stuff that we sell. And this is where you can plug in a note. Now, these notes are not going to be in your business plan, but they're important to write in so that you remember how you got to that $1,000. Because a lot of times you'll come back to this and be like, yeah, I don't remember what that was for. So we're kind of oftentimes on the starting point tab, I'm usually referring to it as like an ingredients list to make a new dish. I don't cook. I try sometimes when I'm feeling brave, but I'm not good at it. But I know when you make a new dish, you have usually a recipe to go off of, and that recipe includes the ingredients. Well, our new dish is our new business, and our recipe is kind of listed here. These are the ingredients. So I put 100, I'll make that 1,000. Inventory, legal fees, cost to set up the LLC. Let's say we did that ourselves. Ooh, rent deposits. That's a big one. That's probably gonna be more like $5,000, and I'd say $2,500 a month for first and last month's rent. The landlord might require us to deposit a certain amount of money just upon signing the lease. And then the utilities are going to kind of do the same thing. So let's say, $500 for utility deposits. Usually they're going to charge you, if you don't have a lot of good credit, they might say, okay, Sean, we'll turn on the electricity for that location, but you're going to pay 1 month's average usage. So you add it up, I'm just throwing in $500. Supplies, yeah, we need some supplies. How much do we want to plug in? Let's say $500 for and this is where I'm not plugging all of my notes here. Like I said, it was a good idea. I'm trying to expedite it. But paper, toner is so expensive, even for the printer, punching bags and things like that. Advertising, okay, well, we need to set up a website. We got to register our domain. I don't know. Let's say that was it. I put it here. I think it was $3,500 for advertising, and that was made up of let's see, was it a website, a grand opening with our chamber? Got to do that. It's a beautiful day. We're starting our new business. Talk to your chamber about how you can get introduced to the business community. We did it. I still have the photo. I love it. It's just a really memorable day. So go all out. But I'm going to say make this $3,500 for a grand opening. They aren't going to charge you $3,000. The big chunk of this is for the website. if you're not going to do it yourself. That can be a little pricey because now you're paying Sean $100 an hour for 20 hours worth of work to stand up a basic website. So, or you can do it yourself. We can try to show you resources there too. Licenses and permits, yeah, I'll say $500, not just for the city business license, but also and construction permits. Because we said we were going to build an office wall up here. Well, the city's going to go, are you now? Well, I need to see drawings before and after, and I need it to be permitted, So there is a lot in this section that if I make that, but if I were to take it out, this is another city business license, home occupation, DBA, burglar alarm permit, zoning, alcohol, I mean, depending on your type of business, it could be expensive. And we want to know that going in. Other startup costs, usually, as it says here, things that don't fit the other categories. I'm going to skip over that. And I think, what did I say? I'm going to have working capital, cash on hand. Now, this isn't necessarily a cost per se to starting the business, but the business will need money to operate on day one. We can't just think, oh, we're going to go buy all these things and we're going to just start the business. Well, there's going to be expenses that come into play, and we need a certain amount of money just to have in the bank at any given time. And in that case, I'm going to say $20,000. I'll say initial cash deposit, because when we set up this LLC in Sean's TKD, we go to our bank, we set up our bank account. That banker is going to say, all right, Sean, how much are we depositing today? And we want to know, oh yeah, we got $20,000 earmarked just for what they call cash on hand or working capital. So it's not necessarily a cost to starting the business, but it is necessary. And especially when you're buying a business, you're not going to, if I was buying Sean's TKD, I might buy the assets, but I'm still going to need to come in with capital. I'm not buying their cash, cash for cash doesn't make sense. I don't know how to finance that. But so this is another one that's kind of like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a big one that a lot of times folks will overlook. So if I hit calculate again, now we have our long-term assets of 40,000 plus our operating 32. So now our total required funds to start this business, or our total assets, if you will, is $72,000. Now comes the heart-to-heart moment. And that's, hey, Sean, where's this money going to come from? And let's say we're going to come in with some of our own hard-earned money. We've been doing this for a long time. We've saved up. We've been in the industry. Now we're going to make a go of it ourselves, and we're willing to pony up a certain amount. Let's say that's, let's see what I have, $40,000. 40K, 1, 2, 3. And the difference we're going to look for a commercial loan for the, what is it? 40,000 minus, that's 32,000. Is that what total startup cost. So interest rates, now we need to talk to our banks. And this is where the business plan and the banking conversation usually kind of coalesce. But let's say, I don't know, it's prime is 8.25% right now. Let's say we can get away with 8.5% over 5 years. And again, we're going to start our repayment in July because we're starting in the middle of the year. We hit calculate, that's going to give us our monthly payment now of probably about $1,000. I don't know, I'm thinking 8.5%. Oh, $650. Okay, no, that's palatable. And the last thing before we get to questions, so get them into the Q&A or get them into the comments if you have them, is we just did a bunch of number work. We made the numbers work because now our sources of funding of 72,000 equals our total required funds. So we're balanced. Again, if you were established business, this is where your balance sheet should balance. Assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity. Should balance. But we need to now articulate for the reader kind of what we base this off of. So I'm going to paste this in, startup costs are based on what? And so I'm going to say startup costs are based on projected startup expenses for the business and determined to be 72,000. 40,000 will be contributed by the owner and 32,000 will be financed via a small business loan at, I changed the percent, at 8.5% over 5 years with repayment beginning in July. This is really important because it's one thing to do the numbers, but it's another thing to tell the reader, the banker, the investor, the friend, or the family member what those numbers are based on. Very important step that a lot of banks really appreciate. So we just covered the team section and the starting point section. The starting point is a tough one because there's a lot of ingredients there that we got to think about. And now I'll turn it back to you, Sophia, to see if we've got any questions so far.
At this time, we don't have any questions yet.
Everyone is thoroughly asleep. They're like, what did I sign up for? All right. Well, we're rounding third and we're heading home. And I'm going to scroll back up to the top because we've done the first four. The next one is the D&A, or depreciation and amortization schedule. Here, I would just say you don't have to do anything. The reason why we wanted to include this section is so you know where we're getting our figures from for depreciation. Again, we talked about all those assets being, and I need to change this from January to July. All those assets that we're depreciating, and it's straight line, meaning this amount divided by this many years of useful life divided by 12 months per year. So let me go back and hit calculate. The other thing, so depreciation is one thing, and the other thing I'd mentioned on this tab is interest, or when you have the loan payment, you have principal plus interest. Well, you can't expense the principal portion of the loan. You can only expense the interest that you were charged to borrow the money. So that's where we're down here. We have a commercial loan that starts repayment in July, and we have interest of $226, $429 of principal. So our balance kind of trends downwards, but you only see this amount showed up on the income statement. But on the cash flow statement, you will need the cash to cover both. So that's a really important thing. So nothing to do here, more nice to know information. And lastly, we need to do two things. Besides additional information, we need to have a sales and expense forecast. And the sales forecast is really the most important part for any business. I'm going to say we had two major revenue sources. I'm going to say we've got memberships. Memberships. And those are by the student. So each student represents a member. And we're going to charge what, like $120? Or not 150. Did I say 150? We'll go 120. $120 per month. And there's no real cost of goods associated with each member. We might have, give them a uniform or something like that, but not really material. And I guess if I were to play out another example, I'd say belt tests. And those are students as well. And every time we test a student, we charge them $50. And just so you can see how cost of goods works, let's say it costs us $3 for the new belt and the trophy that they get after they graduate from white to yellow, yellow to green or orange. But this is the first box up here is what I call the menu box. This is what we sell, what's our margin on what we sell, which I need to hit calculate to get those numbers. But those are really important things for a reader or investor, banker, et cetera, to know how we're getting our revenue. Now, the second part is our monthly sales forecast. We need to list out how many students we're going to start with and grow to in our plan. So in our example, we're going to start with 40 students. Let's say that we have 40 students we know will sign up with us on month 1. And we're going to grow by 5 students per month for the first 18 months. Let's see here, 65, and then 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100, 105, 10, 115, 120, and 125. Oops. So this is what we think we can do. And again, I go through it with a wish list mentality of what you want to do. We're going to look at break even here in a second to see if that's enough, or at what point do we need to get to make sure it's enough. But let's say that we think that's our assumption. For our belt tests, let's just say that we're going to have 20 students a month testing on average doing a belt test. So that's going to be 20 times $50 a month. Oops. Undo. I got a little fast there. And now you'll see here, we have to, again, just like our starting point cost, we have to write out why or what we're basing that on. So I'm going to copy and paste something I've previously written to kind of speed this up and basically articulate what I just told you. The business has two main revenue sources, monthly memberships and belt tests. The revenue projections are based on starting with 40 students in month 1 or July and ending with 125 students enrolled by the end of year 2, which is where we said here, 40 and then end of year 2. This is year 1 projections, January through December, and this is year 2. Each membership will cost $120, and the business is projecting to grow by 5 students during the first 18 months. Additionally, students will be offered a test once per month, which costs $50 on average, and on average, 20 students will be tested each month. There's a small cost of goods budgeted for belt tests to account for the costs associated with the belts and trophies. Voila. I mean, like, this is where it's easy to say, but when it comes down to your business, it's like, okay, what are we tracking? So that we have a CRM that goes, okay, are we doing more than 40 students a month, or how are we doing? Because I can easily plug those numbers in and hit calculate and see what the numbers show, but budget to actuals is a really important conversation to have. And a lot of people will segment or be more due diligent with the segmentation of their expenses. But when it comes to sales, usually everything just gets lumped together into sales. And then it makes it hard to understand, okay, where are we meeting our sales goals? Where are we hurting based on our assumptions? So here we have a sales of 43,000 in year 1, a small cost of goods for those belts. And so we have a gross profit. This is the money left to run the business that we'll look at. Next year, with a full year, we're looking at about 150,000. Again, a very small cost of goods sales, and a lot more to run the business, to pay ourselves, to pay for rent. And that's what we're going to get to next. And here is expenses. And this is where you'll see that we have advertising, car and truck, some of these things that we're going to check off. As we check them off, that there will be stuff that fills in down below. So advertising, yeah, we don't need car and truck. Let's just go with, what do I have here? Got advertising, contract labor. Oh yeah, we said we weren't going to do our accounting. We have some insurance. We have some legal and professional to do our taxes. We have some licenses and permits because they're an LLC. We have rent to rent the studio. And then we've got utilities. But these categories follow the Schedule C, which is what we're going to be filing. It's most common, like sole proprietors or LLCs. So you'll see that this is pretty much how we're going to pay our taxes. So advertising, car and truck, commissions and fees are the same categories. There's some more here, but that we're budgeting based on. So I just point that out as a kind of, but let's say here, advertising, yeah, it's going to cost us, I don't know, let's see here, $500 a month. I thought this was going to save, but I'm going to say, for website, email marketing, and other, come on. I wish there was a way to make it just, do it all, but it's a little copy and paste kind of deal. Come on. Gotta get faster. Let's see. Then we got some contract labor where we would say, yeah, we're going to pay $100 a month for bookkeeping services, for our QuickBooks, and someone to $100 a month is pretty inexpensive. So must be a pretty good negotiator, but this is where we kind of play with the numbers. Okay. Can you hire a bookkeeper for $100 a month? How is that going to work? Oh, that's my brother and my sister. They're going to help us out. $1,000 a month, let's say, for insurance. Oh, I put that under insurance. Darn it. Okay. We're going to swap contract labor and insurance. So I'm going to put this here. I kind of put it in the wrong category. And honestly, the important thing is that we're accounting for the expense. Obviously you want to categorize them right, but let's say we pay $1,000. We already paid it on our starting point, but every July we pay $1,000 a year for general liability insurance. Legal.
Hi, Sean, I have a question. Someone is asking, for a service-based business, would you still use unit sales or a different measurement for sales?
For a service-based business, would you use, say it again?
It was for a service-based business, would you still use unit sales or a different measurement for sales?
Yeah, so for a service-based business, I would look at what is the average job. I mean, depending on the type of business, but I'm thinking a mechanic. Yeah, you have parts and labor, but I would look at what is the repair order, or a plumber. What's the average job that you bill for? So, and that's a really big kind of like conversation to have. Is like, okay, what are we tracking? What are the averages? If we don't have historical data, what assumption are we going to use to track? So that we can kind of break down the sales into, okay, sales that are made up of X, Y, or Z, a certain number of billable hours. So here I might say billable hours and by the hour rather than the student. But what are we going to track in our business? And how are we going to write that up in our assumptions so that someone goes, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, and then we have another question. Someone asked that sometimes the boxes you're explaining are out of view. Is there a way to fit the screen better? Maybe you could just zoom out a little bit.
Let me try that. Let me zoom out. Let's try to make that. Is that a little bit better? Hopefully. So yeah, I can see it kind of cuts off. And that's a good point, even on if you're on an iPad or something. So what I just did is I went up to view and I went to zoom out. And so that way you can kind of see more on one screen. If it's not a computer, sometimes the numbers will overlap, and I've found that helpful. So I'm glad somebody brought that up. Hopefully that's a little bit better view. And if I go back to the expenses, are we good?
They said it's not about the Zoom, so maybe just to focus on the sections as you're speaking about. And then I want to also mention it will be recorded and sent to you, so you can take your time to look at each section.
In my OCD, I'm gonna fix this real quick. Hold on. I'm gonna say do $100 contract labor. And then I'm gonna delete all this. I'm gonna say 1,000. Oh no, it's not. I'm gonna delete that. Make this 1,000. All right. So now we have our insurance premium accounted for, legal and professional. I'd say, yeah, in April, we have to pay someone $500 to do our taxes, tax prep. And then we also have to pay $800 in April for, I could say $800 LLC fee, or I forget if they call it tax or a fee, but to be an LLC, you have to pay $800 a year. And rent, that's the big one that I would say, okay, we said it was gonna be $2,500 a month. And then let's say it jumps from $2,500 a month. We have a 5% increase annually. And this is where we get into the leases and stuff like that. So now it jumps to $2,625. We want to account for that big. It's not super big, but it's another $125, it looks like. And this is where cash and cash flow are important. So we want to account for all these. And let's say $150 a month for utilities, trash, water, internet, if we can get away with $150. I think my internet bill is a lot, even more than 150 with cable, TV, so that people can watch something, or Wi-Fi. But you kind of get where I'm going. I tried to list out some expenses, but obviously this is where the devil's in the details. We want to be able to think through, okay, what are we going to need to operate? Have we accounted for everything? Have we accounted for, things I didn't even include here would be those like bank fees. Maybe your bank charges you a certain amount just to have a bank account. I know it's only $25 a month, but I want those little things start to stack up. And then last but not least, we have some other information that may or may not apply to our business. Accounts receivable, if for any reason we offer a service and then we bill for it after. In our business, most businesses are going to be a cash-based business, meaning we get paid at the time of sale, and we pay our vendors like for rent at the first of the month. So these are all leave 100%. You can account for bad debt, like if you wanted to, but I would have a bigger conversation there about why aren't we collecting. But a line of credit, the tool will assume that you have an endless line of credit that kind of may or may not be true. So you need to talk to your bank about that. And then what line of credit interest rate? You would need to talk to your bank to see, okay, can you qualify for a line of credit? If so, how much? And then what's the interest rate charged? Because if we have a minimum checking account balance, let's say we want to keep, I don't know, $2,000 in the bank at all times. When we project our cash flow, if we drop below that, the tool or the website will assume you have an endless line of credit, and we will put the balance, anything above and beyond that would make us drop below the 2,000 on a credit card, basically. And last but not least, I would say is, what's our income tax? Do we want to budget for income tax? It is defaulted to 0 because this will vary greatly from business to business and owner to owner. So talk to your accountant about what you should be setting aside for income tax purposes. But I'm just going to plug in here 30% because it's kind of a rule of thumb, but not a tax attorney. So talk to one. And I'm going to hit calculate. And now we have done a business plan. Well, at least plugged in the information. And now we kind of can look at, what does that information look like? And so we have an income statement where we can look at look at the business in terms of, are we making any profit? So yes, we are making a small profit in year 1. But more importantly, what I like to work with clients on is the cash flow, because this is where business, it's all about cash. Cash is king and cash flow is queen. And if we run out of cash, it's like running out of gas on a trip to Yosemite. We don't want to be that person on the side of the road with, hitchhiking because we didn't have enough gas in our tank to get to the next gas station or to where we were going. Gas in the tank of a car is like cash in the bank of a business. We never want to run out. So we want to budget or project our cash flow. And this is kind of how it starts out. We have our beginning balance, and we are not starting our business until July. So everything basically up until July is a bunch of zeros with a balance of 20,000. So I'm going to start here with July, and we're saying $20,000 where we're our beginning balance. And that came from our starting point tab, or down here at the bottom, we said we were going to have working capital, cash on hand. Remember that initial cash deposit that we told the banker we were coming in with? Well, that's our beginning balance. We can look at now a cash flow statement. We have 2 things. We've got cash inflows and cash outflows. The cash inflows, come from, we say we're bringing in $5,800. That $5,800 comes from our sales assumptions, where we said we were going to do 40 students at $120 plus 20 students paying belt tests of $50 a pop. Scroll down, that's where our $5,800 comes in. But now if we look at the cash going out of the business, we scroll down here to cash outflows, it goes out in a couple different ways. It goes out first and foremost in cost of goods to sell the 20 students and their belts. We had $3 per student, for the belt and the trophy. So that's a cost of goods is one way. Our big one is here. It looks like operating expenses, $32.50. That came from our expenses section where we add up all the months for July for advertising, contract labor for the bookkeeper. We got none here, and rent. That's the big one. And then utilities. So our operating expenses just to run the business, go back, there's that $32.50. Payroll, James, going to cost us $1,500 of wages and payroll taxes, including workers' comp. So her expense is budgeted there. And then we had that pesky loan payment where we said we were going to finance from our starting point tab all the way down at the bottom. We said we were going to get $32,000 loan at 8.5% interest over 5 years. And that's where that cash, on the cash flow statement, we have both principal and interest covered. So the full $656. So if we add up all of those outflows, the 60, the 3250, the 1500, the 656, we get total outflows of 5465 roughly. And then we just basic math. So cash inflows, I'm on July. Cash inflows of 5,800 minus cash outflows of 5,400 gives us a positive cash flow of $300. Now we haven't paid ourselves yet, and we're the last to get paid. And so you'll see there's some additional boxes here where we can talk about additional inventory purchases, line of credit repayments. If we did run a line of credit right now, we haven't dropped below the $2,000 threshold that we said, so that doesn't apply to us. But if we had investors or owners distribution, let's say now this is what we have to work with to pay ourselves, to make sure this is worth our time. And so it looks like we aren't really able to pay ourselves so much until we get to, what is that, October. And this is a good thing to look through because we want to forecast our cash needs. Now, what I want to get to lastly, we have a balance sheet and income statement, which is great, but break even. The whole point of doing a business plan oftentimes is to figure out what level of sales we need to be at to break even. And it's not a really hard, formula or calculation, but if we know what we need or we know the figures. So we need to know our gross margin. In our case, it's 99% because we're pretty much a service-based business. And we need to know our fixed costs. So if we had a product-based business or we had more costs of goods associated with what we're delivering, then this might be a little lower, 60, 70%. But what we're saying is we make 99 cents on every dollar that we sell, and we have to cover these expenses. So how many dollars do we have to sell? So it's slightly more than that because we don't make a full dollar. And if we divide that by our monthly operating expenses, or I'm sorry, months of operation, we can see now that we need to be doing about 20, or I'm sorry, it's probably going to double. We need to be doing about, wait for it, 40 students to break even, and on average, 15 belt tests. This is it can kind of go one of three ways when I'm working with clients. They can look at that number and they could say, Sean, that's easy peasy. I can do that in my sleep, and that's great. They could say, Sean, I couldn't get to 40 students if I tried my heart out. And that's a big thing to know going into it, because now we need to make the number. We got to go back and revisit the numbers. Or thirdly, the client could go, Sean, I can get to 40, but it's going to take me 6 months to get there. And every month that we're not hitting our break even, we're losing money. So we either need to have more money, well, not either. Oh, wait, I guess you could say we either need to have more money in the bank to help get us there. Again, gas in the tank to get us where we want to go, or we need to have access to a line of credit that will get us there. Hopefully it's the former, not the latter, but this is the benefit of doing a business plan. It's not this pretty business plan. If I click save and then download it, yeah, I have a business plan, but that's where you'll often hear people say, okay, a business plan is obsolete as soon as you press print, because things will change. Maybe Jane calls us right now and says, you know what, Sean, I took a job, much better job with somebody else. But this is where we would need to we can download and edit the plan, but everything we just went through is all here, and will need to be kind of edited some more. Like I don't use this section anymore, so I'll delete that and I'll kind of drag this over. But it's not necessarily this plan that's important. It's the planning process that went through it. And this just gives it to you in more of a template where we can go through and edit it. Like, yeah, we don't have 10 employees, so we can just ditch all of this stuff. But now we have who's the team, who's involved, all the pertinent information for somebody to look at and take us serious. Because most times when people say they have a business plan, they have more of the narrative, and I'm looking at the financials, and that's all down, like here's our expenses, but all that's down here, right here, cash flow. What we just walked through is a month by month breakdown of how we're going to be able to show that investor that we're going to make enough money to pay them back and hopefully make some money for ourselves. So I will end it there and turn it over to questions.
We don't have any questions at this time, but I'll give it another minute just in case anybody has some questions.
So last call for questions, get them into the chat. I know I kind of went fast, but that's really the kind of the meat and potatoes of what we wanted to talk about today is one, how to use the website. We went through it pretty quickly, did it in a little over an hour, but again, it's not the plan at the end of the road, it's the planning process. And that's really where the SBDC comes in to help you think through this, to play devil's advocate. But we give you a tool like this to at least put it down on paper. Because if I'm like you or most people, it's like you have all these ideas floating around, all these assumptions. Well, this is now a place where we can put it down into some sort of format to make it what I call pass the sniff test or look right. Half the times looks is as just, formatting that document. You don't have to worry about that so much. It's more about the content that's involved in the development of it.
All right, we do have a question. Someone is asking, would we be able to use this for more than one business? For instance, I have 3 small businesses.
Yes, I would start with one, but definitely, so it's based on email. So if you have 3 businesses, you probably have 3 different emails, and we can set you up with multiple accounts. But I will be honest, a lot of clients that have 3, I would focus on one and see if it's right for you. But yeah, absolutely. Anything else, or is that it?
Someone is asking if we can add the site to the chat, and I'll go ahead and do that right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know we covered a lot, and that's where we probably, whenever you answer one question, you inevitably turn over, two more questions. And that's kind of what the SBDC is here to do, is to help your business either get started or grow. If you're getting started, this is a great tool to kind of push some numbers around to see if it's really feasible for you, because there's an opportunity cost. You can invest your time, your talent, your treasure into this or something else, but you probably can't do both. And if you're a business owner that's already established and you've been talking to your bank and they're saying, hey, we need a business plan, well, this is a great tool for you to be able to kind of put down a lot of those assumptions and things that you take for granted and it's old hat for you into a format that's more readily known, or well, I wouldn't say it's going to present your business with the best foot forward when it comes to that part of the loan application, because there will be a lot more personal financial statements, tax returns, etc. So this is one of those items that we tend to help out with when it comes to businesses looking for access to capital. But there's no other questions. I will wrap it up, Sophia, or you want to?
Yes, you can go ahead and wrap up. No other questions at this time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on Business Plans Made Simple. We hope to see you next time. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and join us for our next webinar. Join our newsletter to learn about our next upcoming webinar. But until then, thanks for watching.